Well, I'm surrounded by the enemy in this edition. I've got two English supporters on the podcast with me. So let me introduce our special guest from the Cricket Podcast, Jack Hope. Jack, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Menners. I'm happy to finally be here. I've been listening for a while. We cover the same stuff, don't we, a lot of the time? And it's great to talk to you in person.
Yes, and on your Twitter page, you said you're the best independent cricket podcast, but we are actually in the same network now. So I think you need a fact checker to go run over that one.
Well, we'll have to set up some sort of cricket series between the two podcasts to settle it. How about that?
Definitely. And of course, my wonderful co-host, Pommy Paul. Pommy Paul, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, Menners. Nice to be here, mate. It was a bit unfortunate that we lost in the end, but I think we gave you Aussies a big... yeah. Good day, Menners. That's the end of my English impression.
I liked it. It was actually really good.
It was good.
All right, so Jack, I'm going to start things off. My co-host tweeted out during the week, much to my chagrin, that the first test, Bazball vindicated by the first test. Jack, do you agree? Were you happy as an English fan sitting by watching what was going on?
You know what? I mostly was. I think they got 90% of the tactics and the strategy right. I think, really, if you look at this England team, and particularly the batting lineup, and you compare it to the Australian team, as Test cricketers, they are not as talented, but they excel in one area of the game, and are probably better than Australia in one area of the game, and that is scoring quickly. So I think reducing their innings to 80 over slogs, if you like, makes a lot of sense. They put up more runs than they would if they batted the old-fashioned way, and produced a really, really fantastic game. And a game, let's not forget this, where going into the last hour of the cricket match, they were the overwhelming favourite to win. They win that game 7 out of 10 times, maybe even 8 out of 10 times. So I think if you're looking at it objectively, it's a strategy that worked, apart from the last bit. Where it sort of didn't, and I think they got a little bit crazy with the taking of the new ball and some of the bowling tactics right at the end, which cost them the game. If you want to zoom out a little bit and talk about the declaration, that specifically, I think ultimately is vindicated, because it sets up that final hour where England are the favourites to win. And I really think if you're an England fan complaining,
how do you know that? If you made 500 and we were 4 for 140, we'd be panicking, and maybe you win the game by an innings.
Well, look, it's a counterfactual.
It's an easy narrative for the Poms to spin. It's a close game because of our declaration, but you could have scored 550 and absolutely trounced us.
I think most likely if England score 550, the game peters out into a draw. And I also don't know. I mean, you're projecting an extra 160 runs on top of what Root and on top of the score that they were on. And there's a lot. I've seen a lot of people exaggerate how many runs were realistically on offer here. The new ball's about to be taken. It was the end of the day. I think the most likely thing that happens if they do bet on is that it's a draw, or Australia bat a little bit quicker on day 5. I mean, Australia really took their time about getting to the total, and Australia could potentially win anyway. So I thought it largely went well from an England point of view. I thought there's reasons to be hopeful. I think they'll capitalise on those opportunities later in the match, and this happened as well, by the way. In a test where their spinner was unbowlable in the 4th innings, in a match where spin really, really should have been a big factor, or was a big factor. I mean, look at what Nathan Lyon did.
Isn't that a shooting yourself in the foot move, because you're picking a guy that hasn't played Test cricket for 2 years, and that's like a little bit of sort of Bazball arrogance?
I think there's an element of truth there. I don't know if I would file that under Bazball arrogance. I think I would file that under there's no spinners in English cricket, because we play all of our 4-day matches in April and May, where, as the old guard are happy to remind everyone, it tends not to be very conducive to spin. But I don't think they had really another viable option at that point. We might get on to who could play at Lords, but I think Moeen Ali was probably the right pick, and they didn't know his finger would disintegrate, but it did, and that has I think a reasonably significant impact on the match as well. So
Absolutely, it was a big relief.
Yeah,
He
if you're
gets
an England
annoying
fan,
wickets.
yeah, he bowls great balls. I mean, he's a bowler of great balls. He's not a great bowler, but when he gets it right, even the one he bowled to Travis Head, it probably ends up being the best ball of that that innings, the best moment from an England point of view in terms of skill. But yeah, I think ultimately you see the other side of it. Australia are a really, really good Test team. They're relentless with the ball, and they've got 5 proper Test batsmen, like proper players that get into virtually every other 11 in the world. So you run into that, and if you're not perfect, and England weren't, they were probably 8 out of 10. I said 8 out of 10 on our podcast. Missed a couple of chances. I think Root getting out in the second innings the way he did would be the only batter I'd criticise, because he actually can play Test cricket. He doesn't need to play a different way. So maybe they were 8 out of 10. Australia had to be 9.5 to beat them, and they were, and that's why it was a great cricket match, wasn't it? I mean, in the end, and I think that's why it will go down, and in history, and it'll be something we're talking about in 20 years, like Edgbaston 2005. I'd have thought.
One thing I wanted to pick up on, and I agree with you that, and I think everyone agrees that when the 8th wicket fell, Australia was considered an unlikely. I think the odds. I was looking at the odds at the time. Australia were paying $10, and I did have a small bet on them at that, just to blow my own trumpet. But the thing that became interesting was that from that point on, it was like Bazball swapped. That up until then, England had been, by and large, trying to stop singles and playing the right way, and Australia had been, in my opinion, batting far too slowly. Suddenly, England put the field back, bowled a very silly bouncer-heavy strategy, and Pat Cummins cracked 2 sixes and played very aggressively. It was like, that was the whole point of my tweet, Menners, and it was slightly tongue-in-cheek, but that Bazball worked the whole way, and then it even worked more. It was like at the very end, 2 chess players are playing, and then they swapped positions at the very end, and the better player took over from the weaker position and won. And that's what Australia did, that they actually played aggressively, and for the first time having played aggressively, stormed home and won the match.
Well, I mean, I think that's a reasonable summation of that final hour. To be honest, I genuinely thought, and I don't know, whether this was something that you thought as well. I thought Australia were going to bat for the draw. I thought the new ball was going to come, because the over before Cummins hit Root for 14, I think it was a maiden, or maybe they took 1 run off it, and they were avoiding balls that were half trackers down the leg side, and it's not bouncers, certainly not bouncers, hit high balls that you can flick it away for a single. You need 3 or 4 and over. And I was watching that, and I was thinking they're more worried about not being out here than getting the runs. And they're
for a second, it looked possible, and it would have been in keeping with their tactics for the whole game, to play for the draw and to lose. That would have been that's the correct way that game should have ended, based on the deplorable tactics that the Australians used throughout the most of it. And I think that there's this amazing revisionist history that the Australians are already embarking upon. The fact that they seem unable to, and the fans seem unable to, sort of like the reaction to Ollie Robinson's comments when he's saying that that England sort of led the way throughout much of the game, and had Australia on the back foot and had Australia a bit scared. No Australian except me seems to be able to respond to that with anything other, but we won the game, mate. Like, as though he doesn't know. Like, look at the scoreboard, idiot. No, yeah, I think he's aware of the fact that England lost the match. No one is disputing that. But surely, as part of looking forward, you don't have to just blindly accept, after the year that Leicester City won the league, everyone then didn't say, well, they're going to win next year because they won this year. That's the end of it. You've got to look at it with a bit of more subtlety than that. And I think that Australia are congratulating themselves for what they did on day one. There's an article in the Channel 9 press today from Dan Brettig where it's like a retrospective on the end of the series. Like, they're talking about, it's almost in
like it's 5-0 already.
Yeah, it's like a 5-0 soft focus. Like, they said you'd never make it, but you went over there. and you took on the might of England, and with your tactical acumen, you beat them 5-0. Let's go back and look back through the planning period. You know, it's like this. It's like a retrospective from a couple of years' time. Well, hopefully it pans out that way, but it might not. And my serious point is, I think on day one that Cummins and co think that because they put the field back, that they stopped England going at an extraordinary run rate and held them back to keep them to, what were they, 8 for 380 off. How many overs did they face to get to 75?
77.
And they're saying we did pretty well. And they're sort of saying, well, a bit like Muhammad Ali, we did the rope-a-dope. We didn't take George Foreman on toe-to-toe. We were a bit too smart for them. Whereas I don't see that. What I saw was England not hitting a range of shots to the sweeper on the boundary and going, damn you, Pat Cummins, you're too clever. That would have gone for 4, but it didn't. So my head's going to explode. They instead went, okay, that was a good ball from Scott Boland. I've defended that, and I am now jogging to the other end for a single. Fantastic. Up against this highly credentialed Australian attack, we'll take the easy singles on offer. And so I think it's a mistake for the Australians to think that their tactics on day one were vindicated. I think the fact that England lost 8 wickets on day one speaks to the fact that the Australians actually bowled pretty well, despite the fact that they had terrible fields.
I think there was an element on the first day where Australia struggled to find their lines with the ball. Like, I think part of the reason the fields looked bad was because they weren't sure whether to bowl outside off stump or bowl straight, and they sort of went between the two, which opened up many scoring opportunities. So I think that is actually more of an issue. They went deep on the field too early, but I think you could see they just weren't sure on that pitch where to bowl, and therefore they sort of had a bob each way, and it was easy to score.
And the thing was, it was a terrible pitch. It was day one. If England had finished the day at 3 for 420 with Australia using the fields that I said that they should have, that's not necessarily a comment on how Bazball or Australia. It's just that England on day one got the use of a very easy pitch, and you would
Sunny
expect
conditions.
you would expect them to make the most of it. Just I heard the interview with the groundsman or the curator before the match saying he was unaware of the fact that Stokes had requested a flat wicket. Well, if that's the case, then how did you produce that? You know, I spent some time looking at Warwickshire's results at the Edgbaston ground in the lead up to it. What a waste of time that was. You know, I've got a bit of a thing for groundsmen. I think that they're going, you can't possibly know how difficult it is to prepare a wicket unless you've done it yourself. It's kind of like the Ian Botham. How many Test wickets did you take, champ? It's like, I reckon it's not that hard to prepare a decent pitch, and yeah, I can't do it. I haven't done the 10-day TAFE course, but maybe if I did, I would.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think the general feeling here as well is that the pitch wasn't very good. I mean, and all the England bowlers, as I'm sure you've seen, have been in the press this week saying, if only the wicket had been better, we'd have easily run through them on the fourth day.
I'm scared of Jimmy with a new Duke's Rock on a green seamer, little bit of cloud. I'm worried. Here we go. We'll be out for 60 again. Or Stuart Broad, that idiot running in, bowling us out. Like, I'm actually scared about that. And when I see these flat wickets, I think, okay, let's play a battle of attrition like in Australia. Good one. Play on our terms, England. Come on, Baz, give us your best.
But that's the thing, Menace. It's like it was the 6th test of the 21-22 series. It was like an Australian pitch, whereas the first 5 tests of the 21-22 Ashes, it was a miracle that England were only down 4-0. It should have been 5-0. They were absolutely slaughtered. And then suddenly, rather than in this match, Australia slaughtering them as they should have done based on, before the match, I scored the players out of 10, and pound for pound, I rated the English players slightly better than the Aussies based on English conditions. Had I known that these were going to be, the Melbourne pitch of 2017, then I would have marked down Anderson substantially. I would have marked down Robinson substantially. I would have marked up Khawaja and Warner substantially. And then I would have said, yeah, in those conditions, Australia, because I agree with Jack's initial point, I think Australia are a better side, pound for pound, especially in Australian conditions. The fact that England had, Australia was at odds of 10-1 with an hour to go on the final day, I think shows that the way of Bazball is actually the right way to play, and that some of the funkier elements of it get too many headlines. Yeah, I wouldn't have declared when Stokes declared. I don't necessarily think that bringing on Harry Brook first change was what I would have done, but it's not a big deal. He bowled 1 over, none for 1. It wasn't like it was the end of the world. What I think Bazball amounts to is play with freedom. Don't worry about trying to draw the game. Try to play for the win. Obviously, if it got to a point where all you could do would be to draw, then I think that would be the right thing to do. And finally, generally in the field, look to set aggressive fields, keep the field up and stop the singles and keep catches in place. Ian Chappell, who I think is the best Australian captain of the relatively recent past, when he was asked about Bazball during the week, he sort of said it's just the right way to play. It is the right way to play. And I think that Australia's tactics of batting ridiculously slowly at points, although, yes, they won the match. Look at the scoreboard. We won. Yeah, I get that. But I don't think that it vindicates the way that they played. I think that an England side that shouldn't have got anywhere near Australia all but beat Australia because of superior tactics.
I think there's one other element to Bazball that does affect the first innings. And you were talking about the Australian not bowling the right line and length. England, at a really detailed tactical level, the way they bat is all about hitting people off a good line and a good length in Test match cricket. There's a really good graphic for Root's interception point, which I think is one of the best Hawkeye things you're one of the best Hawkeye visualizations, and it showed where he was hitting the ball in 2023 versus 2019. And it was about a metre further down the pitch, which changes completely where you can bowl to him. It turns bowlers like Hazelwood and Boland, I wouldn't say into cannon fodder. I still think they'll have their moments in this series, but it neutralises the thing that they do best quickly. And it means they have to go to secondary skills, which are not particularly well developed quickly as well. And I think that is the element of Bazball that I found most impressive, to be honest. That it's subverted what good bowling is for the opposition, and they quickly have to come up with a plan to counter it. And I think actually Cummins didn't do too bad a job. I know the field went out and it looked a bit weird, but the other thing with Bazball is that if you play like that, you're going to cough up a lot of wickets. I think England have only batted to the new ball 3 times since Bazball has been a thing. Which is pretty incredible. But basically, they're bowled out or they declare in 80 overs almost every time they bat. So if you can dry up the runs, if you can, on a good pitch, keep them below 400 in those 80 overs, then you can probably pat yourself on the back, even though it might look a bit ugly and it might look a bit weird. I actually thought, Cummins was tactically pretty close to spot on in the field as a captain, which might not be the orthodox view on what he was doing, but I thought he was good.
Yeah, I just think that, as I said, they needed to decide whether they're going to bowl straight or outside off stump and plug one side of the field, and therefore you're cutting down one area. And they just
Meadows is in an interesting position here because he's got 2 competing sides of his brain that are warring at each other, and one is I hate Bazball because I want England to lose, and I'm so emotionally invested in it. I'm going to say I hate Bazball no matter what. But secondly, he's also bagged the hell out of Cummins as a tactical captain. So he's kind of, those 2 halves are crossing into each other. That's why that last answer he gave, he was unusually diffident. He didn't know which way to throw the punch.
I didn't know Jack saying that about Cummins' captaincy, but look, on something else, Jack, concerning for Paul and I, we went on TalkSport UK. I think it was yesterday morning. We're always on prime time, like 4:30 a.m. And the guy, Paul, Paul, the host, asked Paul and I for our predictions, and I said 4 or 5-0 as for what I said before the series. And it goes back to what you said, that on paper, these teams, Australia is much, much better, much more accomplished team. And I don't think actually England's playing smart cricket. I think they've got too smart for themselves in the last game. I like positive batting. I like intent, but I think they've just gone a bit too far. So that was where I was. But Paul goes England 3-2. So, Jack, do you think England could pull this out of their ass and win 3-2?
Oh, I think that's certainly on the table. I think the Australia being 1-0 up now makes them favourites for the series. I think I'd have probably gone 3-2 England before, and now I'd say 3-2 Australia. I think it will be close, and I think tests will go either way. But it's certainly not inconceivable that England run away with 2 tests, and we have another test like this, and it goes England's way, and it rains, and then it ends up being 3-1 to England. I think it's extremely hard to call. And I think the other thing is the way England play, where they, effectively think drawing is losing, or maybe drawing is 1% more important to them than losing, means that there will be results, and there are likely to be results in all these matches, which I suppose actually brings your 4-0 or 5-0 into the equation, because if England have the chance to, if they're effectively batting for the draw, need 400 in a day or something like that, they won't bat for the draw. They won't take that route. They will look to win and often lose.
But I don't think they will often lose.
Yeah.
I think that they'll look for the win in those situations, and sometimes they'll lose. But what you've got to acknowledge is that most of the time when sides bat for the draw in those situations, they also lose. I think that by being more aggressive, England at least give themselves the chance to win. It's like to give a putting analogy, that if you putt the ball so that it's going to go a metre past the hole, well, if you happen to be online, at least it's going to go in the hole. Whereas if you putt it very, very diffidently and nervously, you may not hit it past the hole, but you won't even have a check. It may well be online and it finishes a metre short of the hole. And then you're in just as bad a position in the first instance without ever having given yourself a chance. And I think that's where I just think that that's the freedom to play without fearing of the. You've always got to say, oh no, well, we can't try this because we could sacrifice the chance of a draw. The white ball mantra of not mantra, but the reality is when you're facing a big total against you, you can't play for the draw because there's no such thing. So you play with aggression and you either win or you lose, and that's the end of the story. I think having that mentality in Test cricket without going berserk, without trying to get 400 off 20 overs or something, I think most of the time that would actually be the right way to play. So that's where I think
I think Test cricket is a test of all skills, and sometimes you need to be patient, and sometimes you need to be calm and poised and get through the difficult times. And
and they do.
But they don't. They just slog their way out of it.
They did do that in the second innings. They for a sustained. They basically tried to play out Cummins, and Cummins was a bit too good for them on a couple of occasions.
One spell.
And yeah.
What's Joe Root's average in the second innings? It's probably under 46 in the second innings of a match. In a non-Bazball situation, he probably would have come out there, played very earnestly and very well, and scored 37 and nicked one and taken twice as long to do it. Yes, he looked disappointed. It was a disappointing way for him to get out, but he got 46 runs in the lead up to it. As I said, it's probably more than he typically gets in the second innings of a match. I've said this before on this show, but that example of Aaron Finch in his debut Test match in Pakistan, in the UAE, where ringing in his ears before he went out was, "This is Test match cricket. You do not give your wicket away easily. You value every ball." He got to 50 odd. The spinner bowl won, and he basically said afterwards, "I saw it out of the hand and knew I was going to hit it for 6 because that was his natural instinct." Changed his way halfway down thinking, I better play properly, and kind of did neither one thing nor the other, and hit a skimming catch to mid-on and walked off frustrated thinking, had that been in the Big Bash, I would have hit it for 6. I think that McCullum gives them the freedom to hit that for 6. And yeah, every now and again, they'll get out doing it, but I still think the percentages are in their favour. That's where I'm coming from, Menace.
All right, so Jack, people think I'm a one-eyed Aussie idiot, but, I heard Michael Vaughan on several cricket podcasts this week. I don't know. I've lost track of where I heard him say this, probably on all of them. because you can't keep him off a cricket podcast at the moment. I'm sure he'll turn up on the cricket podcast in a couple of weeks. But he is an English captain, said he's critical and wonders how Bazball will stand up to the rigors of an Ashes series. And he made the point, Jack, that, and I'm curious on your point of view, that as an English fan, it's all well and good to cough up a test match in New Zealand when everyone's asleep, or you lose one last summer against South Africa. But, if England were to go like 2-0 down in this Ashes, the tabloids, the press will be going bananas. And then how does this stand up to it?
Well, I think I'd take a slightly more zoomed out approach. This is the best Australia team that has come to England in 20 years, 18 years. Maybe since 2001, I don't know. This is not the best English team that has been around, talent-wise, in that period. This is also an England team that won one test in 17 matches. The personnel really hasn't changed significantly. They've got Brook in.
So you started writing the excuses now,
and they've
got
Duckett in.
He's making a serious point. Don't take a cheap shot at him.
But that I'm just saying. I get that the teams are better on paper, but how will the public take it? You're enlightened.
If the public can take it, I suppose any way they want, and I think this is the genius of Stokes and McCullum, is that they have created, incubated this culture that is fearless, that has an idea about how they want to play cricket, and so far, and I think probably into the future, has been able to sort of block out Michael Vaughan, which is harder. It's easier said than done. And I think. I think that's to be commended, and I think it is the right way forward for these players.
Go to the Oval.
I don't think they'll care. Yeah.
Go to the Oval. It's 5-0, 4-5-0. Australia walk off. Just entertain my dreams for a minute. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you think Baz and Stokes still have their job?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the only way they don't is if they fire Rob Key and everybody, and they tear the whole thing down. And I don't think they'll do that. I think they've already got too much credit in the bank.
The ironic thing would be is that, let's say Australia win the series 3-2 and do so stormingly at the Oval, and there's this sort of repudiation of Bazball. It was all wrong. An A-B split secondary world that doesn't exist, but if you could have done it in parallel, and instead of appointing McCullum as coach, they'd appointed somebody else, it may well have been 5-0 to Australia. That, they might lose 3-2, having out-tacticked Australia and played far beyond what they otherwise would have done. And yet everyone's going to say it was the wrong thing to do because they can't appreciate what it might have been had they not done this.
Well, I like this a lot more. I like this a lot more. We're so shit, we're just going to slog our way out of trouble.
No, that's not what they're saying.
Better than the arrogance that they've been strutting around with. Ollie Robinson, they were spooked. They were so spooked.
You've got a fierce intellect. It would be nice if you could intellectually apply yourself to this challenge.
Jack just said his team is shit, and that's why they're playing this.
He made a point that actually had some nuance to it, and I would like you to look. If you can convince,
I agree. Australia is the better team. Australia on paper is the better team.
Let's play the national anthem. Stop. Let's pause. We're standing for the national anthem, everyone.
I think just to finish off the point on how the English public will take
Jack's
it.
Leaving. He's like, I'm done. Just to finish off before I log off from you.
The English public quite like a gallant loser. Genuinely, this test captured the imagination of the wider sporting public in a way that doesn't happen particularly often in the UK. It made front pages. It was an England defeat, but it was, heroic failure against the World Test champions. It had all the narrative points that actually really appeal to a certain sort of English sports fan. So I don't think if England went down, even 4-0, and I really don't think that will happen. By the way, I think they'll win at least one test, probably two, maybe three. I think there'll be an appreciation for how they played the game and the matches that this type of cricket creates. It captures the imagination. A game that goes for 5 days where you don't know who's going to win until the final over.
Yeah,
until the final over, there was the potential that England could win that match.
I know it's good that Australia took it that deep for you, but I'm just look, I don't want to, because I just think sometimes it bordered on arrogance with the declaration and the selections, and that's where I think cricket always catches you out, and it caught the Aussies out in 2005, and it'll catch you guys out now.
Only because it appears unorthodox. I mean, like the selections, who were they supposed to select? I mean, what, Parkinson?
Folks, someone that could catch?
Well, over Johnny Bairstow? Are we really having that argument? I mean, Johnny Bairstow's year last year, it was incredible. He was the best player. He was the best player in the world.
We'll pick him. He hasn't been keeping. We'll pick Moeen, who hasn't been playing.
That's not a Bazball thing. They've done that for years. Alex Stewart was picked when he wasn't necessarily perceived as the best gloveman. The same with I don't think you can blame the Bazball on those selections. And I still think the best.
Maybe
if I was picking the side, I'd have Bairstow in the side. The point I'm making, Menners, is it's great entertainment what England's doing, but forget that. I'm saying purely pragmatically, if all you care about is the result, and you've got to put your life on the result, England's way, in my opinion, is the most pragmatic way to give them the best likelihood of winning and the least likelihood of losing. And I think it will be the future. And I think that Australia and other countries down the line will adopt it. And that the slightly more outlandish elements of it, the declaration on day one, which I wouldn't have done. I understand why they did it. I wouldn't have done it. But I would say that's if you're looking at that and thinking that's the main thing, that's a bell and a whistle. The main thing is not that. The main thing is playing with aggression and freedom in the way that most successful batters do. And I just think that Khawaja, wonderful test match, triumph and everything else. But the way that he batted on day 5, very, very slowly, Australia now, because they won, are saying, we put ours into the legs of the England bowlers and we were tactically more astute. They weren't saying that when he dragged it on and Stokes got him out. There would have been a feeling in the Australian camp they were going to lose this game. They probably should have gone on to lose it. I'm saying they shouldn't let the result give themselves a revisionist view of their tactics as being superior to England's, because I don't think they were.
Anyway, we're going to go around in circles. We're going to go round in circles.
No, we're not, because I would like you to. I respect you enough that I'd like you to actually.
Positive batting is not something that England invented. Like Travis Head had the highest strike rate in the last World Test Championship cycle. Like, okay, so Stokes does a few funky fields. That's all you're saying is they go out and bat with intent. Well, Australia does that a lot of the time as well. So I mean,
I think they have to test
that really defensively. I'm sure if Steve Smith had batted with a bit more aggression, he probably would have done better. What I'm saying, man, is put aside the fact that you're angry at England for some reason, and put aside that I'm not saying that they invented aggressive batting. I'm saying intellectually, don't you think that what they're doing is a smart way of playing the game?
Absolutely not. I don't.
Why not? Give me a reason other than
taking it too far. They've got caught up in their own bullshit. They've been brainwashed. They've brainwashed the fans. As long as we try and have a dash, it doesn't matter if we lose. I mean, they've got the 3 lions on their chest. Don't throw your wickets away. Put some ticker into it. That's what I say.
Okay. So given you haven't had the decency to come up with an argument, my point stands. Thank you.
I did have an argument.
Your argument was something about the 3 lines on their chest. Can we?
Yeah, put some ticker into it. Don't go slogging every ball for 6.
I mean, where specifically? Where did they get it wrong? I mean, that's what they dropped
the second innings.
The last hour, I would say that. But then there are a few things in Bazball that nobody's really tried yet. Sometimes they're going to get it wrong declaring on day 1 because nobody does that, and we don't really know what the butterfly effect of that is later in test matches, because that's not the orthodox. We don't play that way. And I think probably giving Root the extra over, I don't think any other team giving Root the extra 3 overs in the end, wasn't it? I don't think any other team doesn't take the new ball at that stage for as long as they did. But it
They wouldn't
could
have
have
got the wicket
worked.
for Carey if they didn't give him the first extra over.
It could have worked.
And if Cummins had not attacked, it probably would have worked. Australia may well have had to play for a draw. But Cummins finally got the message of a bit of aggression might be the right way to go.
Well, I can't believe Michael Vaughan and I are on the same side on this.
Yeah, he's amazed as well. He can't believe it either.
Where specifically? last hour aside, where are they throwing wickets away that they were previously preserving? It's
okay. Well, Bairstow reverse sweep. You're trying to win a fucking test match. Harry Brook trying to hit 1 for 6. Joe Root trying to hit 1 for 6. I mean, do you want more examples? They're all there.
Bairstow has added 5 runs to his career average since he started playing this way.
Okay, don't reverse sweep the goat. Don't reverse sweep the goat when you're trying to bat Australia out of a test match. I mean, you ask for examples, there they are.
But in a one-day game where I think we'd all agree Bairstow's maybe in your world 11. I mean, he's certainly your backup opener if he isn't opening the batting. What would he do in that scenario? He would bat that way, and that's what the game plan is. If you are a genius,
I think it's stupid. And I said it before the series. Baz tried this as a player against Australia, and it didn't work. And he's going to try it now, and it's going to fail. It's a simplistic tactic. They go out there with intent. That's it. Yeah, we'll win.
One ball,
but it worked.
On the 2015 World Cup final is all you're basing it on, Menners. He played one bad shot against Mitchell Starc. I was there. I saw it. But they beat us in the preliminary game. I think you're putting that one ball that Starc bowled. Brendan McCullum's doing a lot of work in your mind.
What about the 2016? Was it 2015 or 16? We went to New Zealand. And we smashed them 2-0 and they tried.
We always do. We're better than them at cricket. They don't play cricket. They have 11 cricketers in New Zealand.
I'm just saying.
The other 5 million people play rugby union.
His tactics have not worked.
In this match, though, they did work. England scored 670 runs in the test. That's enough runs to win. But
that's the point. That the Australians cannot get over that. Jack he's not claiming that England won. He is accepting the scoreline.
But they could have scored more runs. They could have played smarter and be 1-0 up in the Ashes now. Like, where's their passion, Jack? This is your team. This is your team. You're defending your team now. You're defending your team after a loss. Are you what?
I'm defending. I'm defending the way that they played. I'm not. What am I supposed to do? Castigate them for losing by 2 wickets? The narrowest Ashes wickets win in 100 years. Like it's all right then. Well, it would have been better if Bairstow had taken the easy catch and the missed dumping, and then England really would have cantered to victory.
Absolutely.
Like it would have won by 100 runs.
But you got to play aggressive.
Really,
so you can't pick a keeper. Point. You can't pick a keeper because Harry Brook slogged a few on a pitch in Pakistan. We've got to pick him.
If Australia had missed, if Cam Green doesn't take that one-handed catch, Australia probably lose. And if Bairstow takes one of those chances, England probably win. Like they're the actual margins in this game. It's not like when a declaration was, or even giving Root an extra over, or a reverse sweep that Bairstow played in an innings where what was the top score? 46. It wasn't like runs were flowing in the third and fourth.
20 runs in the last over before Stokes declared. Like you could have put way more scoreboard pressure on the Australian batting lineup. They look up and they see 420. Say Robinson and Root don't put on 150 more. I'll give you that one, Jack. They look up and it's 440 or 450, and you're like, "Fuck, we're 5 for 140 now." When you look up, it's 380, or maybe we can get there. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
I mean, I probably agree on the declaration. I think that was quite bold, but
I wouldn't have declared either. But I think that's a minor part of.
At that point, he didn't know it wasn't going to rain Sunday on Sunday.
That's what you're all brainwashed. This is what they've done to you. Oh, we're playing positive. Just forget all the stupid stuff we do.
But I genuinely think this is I think entertainment does factor into their decision making. So we need to bear that in mind when we're telling the story of these matches. I think the other thing is I really don't think they rate the draw at all. I think they look at a match situation where it's 40-40 with a 20% margin for the draw, and they would happily give the other team a 55% chance of winning to make their chance of winning go from 40 to 45. Like I think that's how England think.
I think you're right, but I think that the maths actually is in more favour than that.
Yeah, it might be, but I think even in those extreme cases, England
Yeah.
would happily ship the other team or make the other team favourites to give themselves a little bit more chance of a win versus a draw. And that, I think, if you're an England fan, that probably that's can be a little bit frustrating. Would it be nice from an England perspective to be here on this podcast and it's 0-0 and we're saying, what a test, shame England couldn't get the final 2 wickets. It would be better if you were an England fan to be able to say that. Like that is categorically true. If that's what you're asking, and if you're saying like, would I like to go back in a time machine and purely with an England hat on, got them to bat and score another 150 runs? Yes, like in the first innings. But
Robinson, 100 not out, raises the bat.
I also totally see where they're coming from when they make that call, bearing in mind the thought process that they're using. And I think you have to accept that they're occasionally going to put the other team in a slightly better position within this framework, but you're getting so much more out of the players from an England point of view. Like this England team, I mean, like Ollie
Australia
Pope
they have to stay with us though. England have to stay with us now, though. I mean, you talk about entertaining.
They stayed with you the whole 5 days.
No, but I'm saying in the series,
Australia had to stay with England.
If it's 2 or 3 nil, how many people are going to be watching?
I don't think it's going to be that. I think Manners.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you look back at previous Ashes as well is an enormous amount of assumption that it's going to continue the way it's continued. That after the first test in 2019, England were hopeless. They could never win again. After England won at Headingley, Australia were hopeless. They could never win again. Australia then wins the 4th test match. It's like, England can never win again. England duly wins the 5th test. Same thing happened in 2015 that England lost, I think, the 2nd test. And it was like, they are absolutely woeful. We imbue a result that was one of the closest results in Ashes history with a hell of a lot of significance, given that it could easily have gone the other way. And would now everyone be saying, Australia's conservative play ruined it for them. Bazball has been vindicated. They probably would be saying that. And again, I'd be cautioning about going too far the other way as well. I think it was a very narrow victory. I'm going to change my position, though. I have said that Australia will win, that England will win the series 3-2. I'm altering my prediction to 4-1 to England after having heard Mena's thoughts.
I think the other thing is, if it did continue the way that this test went, I think Australia are going to lose a lot of test matches in this series.
Agreed.
Australia consistently took a wicket just when the game was about to go out of, just about to slip out of reach. Did it the whole way through day one and most of the way through the second innings as well. What is more sustainable? What is more sustainable? Getting people out when they're on 30 in Test match cricket. We know that's quite difficult. Is that more likely, or is it more likely that Australia put on 54 for the 9th wicket in the next Test? Like, what's the actual answer to that?
I think that England had the advantage of winning the toss, but other than that, it was Australian conditions. The England keeper dropped loads of catches. The England spinner was unable to bowl, and Australia largely outplayed throughout the game because of their class. Ended up winning it in a narrow one. You look at the form forward from that, and I'm a bit nervous about Australia's chances in the rest of the series.
I think Australia's going to get better. I agree. I think there's a lot for Australia to improve on. And I want to shift this discussion because we can go round in circles and Jack is never going to come back. So I do want to have a chat about the second test in Lords because I guess there were a few issues for both teams going into it. And then we're going to wrap it up with Can't Let It Go. We've got about 10 minutes. So looking at Lords, Jack, Moeen Ali effectively will be ruled out very shortly. Is all the mail coming out of England, and that he will be replaced by Will Jack. So what can you tell us about Will Jacks? I've only ever seen him, I think, in the Blast. What can you tell us about him? And is he an option as a spinner?
I think Will Jacks is a pretty narrow bowling improvement on Joe Root.
Okay,
right. I don't think I don't think he carries a huge amount of threat He doesn't carry a huge amount of threat at first class level, to be honest. I don't see that translating into the test match arena. What he does bring is a very, very solid number 8 option with the bat. Probably at this point in his career, a better batter than Moeen Ali. So he'll suit Bazball from that point of view, and an extremely explosive batter at that as well. I think he's got the highest strike rate in T20 cricket this year for anybody to have faced 100 balls. He's basically smoking it wherever he goes. Bowling
He does
wise,
the circuit, doesn't he? He plays in a few T20 comps around the world, and
yeah, he did the SA20, and he was in the IPL but ruled out with injury, and he's playing the Blast at the moment for Surrey. I hadn't heard that. I mean, I had heard that. I'd also heard that they were thinking of Liam Dawson, left arm spinner. Seems to always be England's 12th man, and Rayan Ahmed, who you might remember from the Pakistan series as well, picked up a 5 on debut. Rayan Ahmed's not bowled that much this year for Leicestershire. It was a wet April and May, so he played more or less as a batter. Again, I don't think he's carrying a lot of threat with the ball.
is it worth it then, Jack?
To be honest,
shouldn't you just pick 4 quicks? Because Stokes not going to be bowl much. And I guess which quicks are you thinking should front up at Lords?
I think there is definitely an argument for a horses for courses selection of Chris Wokes. He also, brings a lot of batting talent, which slots in nicely at number 8. And I think you could even jettison one of the other seamers for Wood to vary things up as well. I mean, Lords is an interesting one. Like it usually helps seam bowlers, but it can flatten out, particularly on day 2 and 3, because of the way they do the drainage. Often it's very juicy on day 1, very flat on day 2 and 3. Having Wood around, if you end up bowling in that period of the game, would be quite handy.
Have you heard any thoughts about what they're actually likely to prepare, given how Edgbaston was so different to what it might have been expected? Any thoughts on any mail on what Lords is going to be like?
I would imagine it would be quite similar to the Ireland Test match. In other words, pretty flat. Although you've always got the slope at Lords, so that genuinely will provide consistent threat.
Yeah,
you think?
So do you think they'll go in with Broad, Anderson, and Robinson, or they'll drop one?
There is talk that they will drop one. I don't know if they will. So there's the longer gap until this Lord's test. So if you are going to retain an attack, it makes sense to do it for this one, and then make changes for the next one, I think. Also, they are probably England's best bowlers. I think the trickiness comes if they decide to go down the Chris Wokes route, then you've got 4 very, very similar bowlers. So one of them has to drop out for Wood. If they pick a spinner, then I think they will retain those 3. Does that make sense? It's sort of there's the choose your own adventure.
What would you do? What would you do if you were chief selector?
Oh, it's a tough one. I would probably go with Wokes and maybe drop Broad for this one, which he wouldn't like.
Blowing up on Sports again.
I think, and this probably get people's backs up. I think England's best bowler at the moment is Robinson. So I think he's a non-negotiable inside. And then it's whether you think you're going to get more out of Anderson or Broad. I don't know. I thought Anderson's had an injury. I thought he looked a little bit unfit. So if he is unfit, then stay with Broad. But
makes sense.
He's a better bowler than Broad. So if he is fit, play him.
Hey Jack, have you seen Billy Brownless? His thoughts on Ollie Robinson. Google if you have it.
I have not. No.
Go to YouTube. It's on a radio station called Triple M. Put Billy Brownless and Billy Brownless and James Brayshaw. Billy Brownless is a former very good Australian rules footballer, but he has. And Triple M's a kind of a blokey radio station where it's all rock and heavy metal and.
I'm aware of Triple M. Yeah.
It's a pretty fun, it's pretty loose, but he's just absolutely giving it to him. You might find it quite funny.
I'll have a look. I just want to go back to Will Jacks. I just had a quick look at his first class bowling average, 49.37.
Yeah, it's not that great. Yeah,
that's if he's going in as your that is probably worse than Joe Root as a spin bowling option.
But the only thing that matters is what's his first class batting strike rate.
Yeah, it is. Can he play the
not too
reverse
bad.
sweep?
It's 60, so not too bad.
All right, I got a question for you, Paul, before we get to Can't Let It Go. I
Yep.
heard Andrew McDonald talking after the game, and he said something that twigged to me. He said they were surprised how hard England went at Boland, which I'm like, have you seen England bat in the last 2 years? And then he said they didn't pick Stark because they didn't think he would suit the conditions, which doesn't make sense to me because it was actually the pitch that would suit someone like Stark over Boland. So I guess, what do you make of those comments, and what would you do for Lords?
I think it's sad if they drop Boland for Lords, in the sense that Boland has had one bad test match. He was the pick of the Australian bowlers in the World Test Championship final. He's played 8 test matches, averaging about 15 before this match. He's done absolutely everything right. It just seems a bit churlish to say, mate, yeah, of course you're in our best side, as long as you keep bowling with an average that was more suited to the 1890s. Yeah, we'll keep on picking you. But the minute you don't play like the best player in the world, you're going to be removed from the side. Yes, of course, Boland had a really poor game. He's a little bit unlucky. He had the catch dropped by Travis Head. He had that one caught behind that they didn't appeal for. That would have made things look a little bit different. And I said, I don't think the fields that Cummins set suited him. But it has to be said, he also sprayed them round in a most atypical way for him. I still think that if I'm playing the next match and it's my life's on the line, I want him taking use of the Lord slope. So I'd stick with him. I'd be tempted to bring Nisa in, but I don't know. I'm not averse to Stark coming back in. I think he's a very good bowler, but I'd like to stick with Boland for at least the Lord's Test match.
I'd love to see Boland, Hazelwood, and Cummins bowl at Lords with the slope. All right, we are running out of time. We're going to wrap this up with Can't Let It Go. Jack's got a few minutes. Can't Let It Go. That little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper. If it's Johnny Bairstow, he drops it. If it's Alex Carey, he pouches it and celebrates. Jack, what is your Can't Let It Go?
I think it's something that most people in world cricket won't have noticed. But last night in the T20 Blast, the second highest chase in T20 cricket, professional T20 cricket ever happened. Surrey were playing Middlesex. Surrey batted first and scored 252. I mean, at one point they were 177 for none. I think off 13 overs, they were going ballistic. Will Jacks, who we were just talking about, 96 or 45.
Whoa, get him
rocks.
in there.
Yeah, he I think it was 5 6s in one over, going mad. Middlesex, for the context, they played 10 matches in the Blast this year. They have lost all 10, most of them badly. They chase it down with 4 balls to spare. They get there, they canter home in the context of a T20 cricket match. An unbelievable contest between the two London teams in England, and a good advert for the Blast as well. I mean, it gets derided slightly, and probably from an international point of view, nobody really ever pays attention to it. It's not a franchise competition.
Sadly, I do.
It's basically club cricket, but it can throw up some really interesting games. There's a lot of history there as well between all the different counties, and because it isn't a franchise comp, there's a slightly different narrative to it, in that you're not always seeing best against best. You're seeing teams have to develop players and play youngsters and think about things a little bit differently. So
love that.
Sometimes it throws up stuff like that.
Beautiful. Paul, do you ever Can't Let It Go?
I do. I just add as well that if the draw was an option in T20 cricket, Middlesex wouldn't have chased those down. So yes, they played Bazball. That's why they won. Now, my Can't Let It Go, as Menas didn't laugh at that joke either. I probably just wasn't listening.
No,
I can't let it go.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. We bagged the Channel 9 app earlier on, and I was too sleep deprived to say so properly. But the Channel 9 app is like it's something out of 1997. That, yes, it's wonderful that the cricket is on free to air and it's getting fantastic ratings. Sometimes getting over 1 million people watching, which in this modern age of splintered viewing habits in a population of 26 million is really, really impressive. It's doing big business, the cricket, even though it's sometimes on their secondary, or mainly on their secondary channel. But their app, you can't fast forward easily. You can't if the game's already started, you've got two choices: either to watch it live or watch it from the very beginning. You can't go back to 5 minutes. If you miss a wicket and you're listening to, I wouldn't mind seeing that wicket. No, you have to go back to the start of play and slowly watch through 2 hours of play to get to it. The highlights that they have on the app, they've got an algorithm that clearly hasn't been designed by someone who knows cricket. They show only the first half of DRS. They don't show the result. They didn't explain that England had declared on day one. If you're just watching, it's like 1 minute Joe Root's hitting sixes. The next minute David Warner's batting. It's like, what's going on here? But the thing that I can't get over, because I've watched free-to-air TV for the first time in ages, I've seen Channel 9's ad for their own app. And it's like, they must assume that every Australian is 74 and has never used the 94. Apologies to 74-year-olds. Every Australian is 104 and has never used the internet before. Presumably, that's what free-to-air television demographic is left with. But they've got this ad that they're saying, we have a start over button. And they're saying, if you miss the start of the show, you can start over. As if, oh my God, isn't it great to be alive in 1999? It's like, Jesus. Just
all right.
Put the modicum of technological improvement that you need to make a decent app. If the game finishes at 4 a.m, some of us would like to be able to watch it at our own leisure and not have to be subject to ancient technology, Channel 9. Thank you.
Rant ended. Well, Jack, I don't think you can stay for my Can't Let It Go. So,
I want to hear this. No, I want to hear this. And then I can do another 5 minutes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. My Can't Let It Go is that vision of Alistair Cook sulking like a little baby when Australia hit the winning run. So I'll run you through all the things that annoy me about that. He starts gibbering away during the call. So Jim Maxwell's trying to call this historic moment, and you've got him blabbering away for a minute, and I'm like, keep your mouth shut. And then he sits there sulking like he's in the dressing room. No thought about the moment. No thought this is a great test match. No thought that he should actually embrace the moment and do his job as a broadcaster. Just sat there like a little baby. And so I tweeted out that of zero respect for him. And I regret that line because of course I have respect for him. He's a wonderful cricketer. But in that moment, I was very disappointed with him. But the only thing that's flipped for me, because I've watched the footage now 100 times, what I can see in those beady little eyes of his is real hate for the Aussies. And that I can admire. So I've kind of gone full circle. But that so annoyed me that like he's broadcasting this great test victory and all he's doing is throwing his toys out of the cot. Like, do better. Do better.
I haven't seen the footage yet, but I'm sure you were just projecting your own feelings.
No. He outright supports England on air. Like he doesn't hide it at all. Yeah,
he doesn't hide it. It's quite funny. He sometimes says, "Wow," when someone's been bowled. He says that. Which is amusing, given that they'd said they wouldn't pick him if he was available in this side because he doesn't score quickly enough. But I bet you, Metas, that he's probably looking quite neutral and just quite.
He's not. Jack, have you seen the footage?
I haven't, no, but I can imagine it.
All right. Well, Paul, don't talk about something you don't know about because, like, the News Corp did a whole, spread with his face.
Oh, it must be true then.
Well, they're not going to put him on the front page of the paper if I'm making it up.
No, I'm sure you believe it's true.
Well, okay, you can go and watch it and apologize, but that was fantastic, Jack. Thanks so much for joining us. We know you've got to run off. Love what you're doing on the Cricket Podcast. I have been podcasting for a long time and I really admire, I know how much goes into doing a weekly show. So really admire you guys for doing it for almost 5 years. It's tremendous stuff. So congratulations. Enjoy the rest of the series. Hopefully we can catch up again, but thanks for coming on.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Really enjoyed it. If you want to find the show, we're on Twitter at the Cricket Pod, or just search the Cricket Podcast, and we should come up. See you later, everyone.
Thanks,
Jack. Great to have you on.
All righty, Paul. We'll wrap it up now. I know Jack had to rush off, but thanks everybody for listening to the show. Great news. I'm going to be interviewing one of the Australian women's team members of the Ashes squad after the test match that they're playing at the moment. So that'll be coming out sort of next week after the test match. So stay tuned for that. But Paul, I think next Wednesday, Lords kicks off. So looking forward to our daily wraps again.
Can't wait. Yep, the sleep deprivation's about to continue. And between now and next show, I will look at that vision and I'll look at it objectively and see what Alistair Cook was like.
You know what happened though? The thing is, I was late, and putting zero respect for Cook, who's an England captain, maybe wasn't the smartest thing because it's very incendiary. Like, I could have just put, "Look at him sulking," and I would have got a similar result. But then, like, some media people in Australia retweeted it, and then I just had to turn off notifications because a lot of English people did not take kindly to me saying that about Alistair Cook. So, haven't been on Twitter for a few days. All right. Great to catch up, all.
Yeah, it was good.
So
goodbye.
download and subscribe to the show. Rate the show 5 stars. If you want to go back over some Men's Masterclass interviews, there's some great chats there. Mike Whitney talking about the 81 Ashes. But we will be back after the first day of Lords with a wrap of that action, and I'll be catching up with the Australian women's team in between. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching.
Bye.